Good morning. I'm Bonnie Gardner. I'm co-chair of the Public Affairs Forum of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Austin. Our forums are free and open to the public and occur most Sundays at noon. We encourage you to attend. If you'd like more information about our forums, you can go to our website at www.austinuu.org. And today we have a wonderful speaker, and I'm going to ask Dale Beulah, a member of the Forum Committee, to introduce our speaker, Brandi Clark. Thank you, Dale.
Good morning, everyone. It's a little chilly this morning, but this will be a nice warm group to share some information. We want to introduce our guest speaker this morning, Brandi Clark Burton. She's the founder of the Austin Econetwork, which we're passing around a little flyer. If you'd like to be on the Econetwork and get once a week environmental updates, please fill out that with your email address. She's also part of the Food Shift Austin, and the Austin Chronicle has dubbed her the Queen of Green. The Austin Business Journal also says if Austin has one green ambassador, it certainly would be Brandi. She's a serial social entrepreneur with dozens of ventures. She is also a community connector, an active civic leader, and a trusted green advisor. She's been an inspirational voice for change in this city for quite some time. She grew up in Austin, graduated from Westlake and Yale, not too far apart, and Leadership Austin. So for 4 years, she's been voted the best environmentalist by the Best of Austin Readers Poll. She's also won the Austin Business Journal's 2009 Green Advocate Award, the 2011 Mayor Individual Achievement Award, and the 2012 International Women's Day Environmental Award. So she's got a lot to share with us. So let's welcome her.
Thank you for having me this morning, and thank you, given the weather and the desire to be cuddled up at home, for braving the weather to stay out and hear about this. The subject is near and dear to my heart, and I'm sure it is to you as well. Food waste is something that is so prevalent. It is shocking, really. When I started looking into this subject, it broke my heart a little when I realized how many people don't know where their next meal is coming from, and yet we have 40% of food being wasted in America. That's from farm to table. That is at the farm, the stuff that never gets picked, it's left in the field because it's not perfect and they know people aren't going to buy it. It's the stuff that's bruised and damaged in transit and gets discarded because, again, it won't be acceptable to the end consumer. It's the product that never gets moved from the grocery store. It gets past its prime and they pull it from the shelves and you never see it. And then it's the stuff that you bring home and intend to cook with it, but didn't get around to it. Or you actually make it into a dish and then all of the dish doesn't get eaten and that gets thrown away. And so you can see all these places where the fallout happens. And in many cases, it's perfectly good food. The more I looked into this, it sort of blows your mind. Picture a 40-yard container of trash, that they use at construction sites and things like that. Now picture it filled with the heels of bread. Why? Because this bakery delivers to delis. Have you ever ordered a sandwich at a deli and gotten it served on a heel of bread? No. Well, it doesn't magically disappear. It gets thrown away. And in some cases, they require that the end two pieces off of both sides get discarded. So it's really that prime middle cut of bread that you're getting your deli sandwich on. And you think of all these places where it's happening. Do any of you own chickens? I do. We have 4 chickens, and they don't always lay the same size eggs. I'll just tell you that. It happens that some are big and some are small. But if you're selling eggs to a grocery store, you need them all to fit in those little spots in the carton. And when they don't fit, you don't sell them. And in many cases, I mean, the farm will eat those eggs, but they can only eat so many. And a lot of food just gets thrown away. It's just discarded. And it's not for ill will or anything, but it is for lack of a better plan. And so what I want to encourage all of us to be thinking about in our lives, in every step of it, is a better plan for how to avoid that food waste. The average American household discards 25% of what they purchase. On average, that's $133 a month that's being just tossed down the disposal or into the trash can. That's $1,600 a year. And I know my family would miss $1,600, and probably yours would too. But it's happening just little bit by little bit. And to the degree we can avoid that and prevent that from happening, we'll be saving ourselves money. But furthermore, I like to use the example of pizza, because most everybody can relate to pizza, people of all ages. And you think about what it takes to make a pizza. You have the wheat that came from the Midwest, and it was planted and raised and harvested and culled and processed and turned into flour and then shipped, across the country and then sent to, either the manufacturer or the pizza shop that's going to make it into flour or into dough. And then you have the other ingredients. You have the oils. You have the vegetables. Maybe those tomatoes came from California. Again, planted, watered, grown, picked, packaged, transported again, washed, put under lights, air conditioning in the grocery store, all of that. The long journey for each one of the ingredients that goes into making a pizza. There's the oils, some of them, olive oil and things like that may come from overseas. And animal products, dairy to make the cheese. Each dairy cow drinks like a bathtub equivalent of water per day. So I'll get into more of the environmental impacts in a minute, but all of the embodied energy, that means the energy that goes into delivering on something to happen, like say an apple. I'm going to eat an apple that was grown here in Texas. It may have traveled, 100 miles or so. I eat it, compost the core, and that's the sum of it. But in some cases, those apples are coming from Washington State or from New Zealand. And each one of those choices we make impacts, especially when it gets wasted. You think about all of the energy it took to grow it and move it and get it moved around, and then for it to get rotten in the crisper or, get left out on the corner of the cutting board or whatever. For whatever reasons, it doesn't get eaten. And most people think, probably the big problem is the restaurants. It's probably their fault that all this food waste is happening. Let me get the actual number because I don't want to say it wrong. Household waste accounts for a large percentage. Actually, just throw out some numbers of what you think the percent of it that is household waste out of the food wasted in America. Do you hear numbers? 30%? 40%. I am looking for the actual number here. So numbers escape my head. I get the general gist of it, and then the numbers are like, I think it is, I don't want to say it wrong, especially since this is being recorded. I heard you say it. I'm going to have to pull it up. But here, the pie chart that's here, this shows the pie. So picture that, this much of the pie is thrown away just in your own household. 40% is at the household level. At the U.S. level. Globally, the statistic is that half the food is being wasted, and they say that this is from Food Shift in Oakland, and we started a sister organization here in Austin called Food Shift Austin. I encourage you to go to the foodshift.net website and sign their pledge. They have a food pledge there, and they're asking people to participate because, as it says here, 50 million Americans do not have consistent access to food. And being that we're here in a church and we hopefully are taking heed of the call to take care of the least of us and care for thy neighbor and be neighborly and be, generous people, there's got to be ways to get that food to people. And I have been a volunteer for the last over the last year with a group called Keep Austin Fed. It started off not that long ago with just 1 or 2 volunteers and 1 or 2 restaurants donating to 1 or 2 places, and the numbers are growing monthly. The number of people volunteering, the number of restaurants donating, the number of places that we're identifying that need food. And so regular drop-off spots include a Safe Place, which is a home for women and their children who have had to get out of the household wherever they were because it wasn't safe. And there are, unfortunately, hundreds of people per week going through there who need meals 3 times a day. They left. They didn't bring their refrigerator with them. And then there's other people in all sorts of financial circumstances that have them not able to go buy nice, healthy meals, and yet they're being tossed out all the time from our homes as well as our restaurants and our grocery stores. And the Capital Area Food Bank does a pretty good job of harvesting a lot of the non-perishable foods as well as the packaged produce that can be, transported in whole trays. They're not interested in loose pears and apples and things like that, or, one piece of broccoli. That's not what they trade in, if you will. And they provide food to a lot of food pantries and they work with other outlets that distribute the food, but the Calvary Food Bank is not someplace that people go for a meal. Of course, there's soup kitchens. There's churches with pantries. As it says there, 1 in 7 people in Austin are hungry. And this was brought into focus recently with the floods that happened, and people in Southeast Austin who already didn't have a lot to work with. Many of them had their entire homes and lives erased when the floods literally took away their homes, their vehicles, their refrigerators full of food. And now a group of people through Keep Austin Fed, another group that has mobilized, I can't think of the name right now, but they are, if you want to get involved, I can help you, and you can find out if you start by going to Keep Austin Fed. But there are people volunteering to cook meals every day and have been since the floods happened. But it's not just in times of crisis that we really need to be thinking about how do we redirect this food. We pick up food from Snap Kitchen. They've been very generous with giving their food. And what's different about Snap Kitchen versus even a bakery, I mean, it's nice to get a pastry every once in a while, but it's not going to sustain you and nourish you. With Snap Kitchen, people are getting salmon dinners with rice and mixed vegetables and wholesome grain, products and things like that. And the people at Safe Place that have been regular recipients, and Easter Seals. Some of the people who were at Easter Seals said they had never had food like that. They were so grateful, and they felt so good after eating it. Like they just hadn't even been exposed to it. Like if you live on a diet of lots of fast food and convenient food, getting an opportunity to have a healthy meal is a great opportunity. And this brings up one point, that all food and all food waste is not created equal. We come back to that concept of embodied energy. The amount of energy it takes to grow a pound of beef versus a pound of grain is vastly different. I mean, multiples of 10s and 20s and 30s and 40s, depending on the type of farm and the type of practices that they have. But eating lower on the food chain is better for the environment in general. But it also increases the degree of tragedy when meat goes to waste, because not only did all those resources, all that water and energy and other food that could have fed people that was fed to the animals, when the meat goes to waste, not only did a life die in vain, but all those resources are thrown down the drain. And so we really need to be conscious about the amount of meat that we eat, if we buy it, to buy like really consciously and responsibly. like only the amount you're going to use, and make sure that it's not going to waste. And there are a variety of ways to do this that can be fun, really. If you invite people, I cooked soup yesterday, and there was more than my family was going to need, and I took some to my friend, a single mom who's taking care of 2 kids, and she's perfectly capable of cooking, but when some food showed up, she was super excited and grateful, and the bond between us grows when food is shared. I mean, you guys know, because you have soup and salad get-togethers, there's potlucks, there's other opportunities to gather with other people and share food. And at each of those, I would challenge you to make sure that none of the food that comes to those events goes to waste. Either it goes home with the people who brought it, or you have to-go containers ready, on the ready, to package up the leftovers and send it home with people. Or arrange for, after each event, there's going to be a designated driver who's going to take the stuff and donate it to one of the places in town that could use it. I'm going to queue up another page here. I'm going to go back to this one. So with the Food Shift Pledge, there's another graphic that might be a nice background. So the green is loved food. That means somebody got to enjoy it and eat it. And the grayed out is the wasted food. And that is a stark number there. One of the things that really gets to me is when I think about not just the 50 million in America who are not sure where their next meal is coming from. That's 1 in 6 Americans. 17 million of those food insecure are children. That's the same number of every child enrolled in a U.S. kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. Every time I get present to that fact, it really gets to me. Because those kids have no control over where their next meal is coming from. And so supporting programs that get food to children, whether it's breakfast programs, lunch programs, some sort of rescue programs, I would argue that the size of the problem also points to the size of the opportunity here. We have a very broken system when it comes to food and food distribution, food management, and our regard for food. It has become too easy to throw food away. And we need to just, we're at an exciting time because we get to redefine what is acceptable, what is okay and what is not okay. And I'm just going to say it is not okay that we're throwing away so much wholesome, healthy food when there are people among us who really need it. Gather myself here. So one of the other things to think about is if the food is not fit for human consumption, and that happens, what else can you do with it? And I'm going to pull up this diagram. This is on Edible Austin. So this is a takeoff on a diagram that the Environmental Protection Agency put together. It looks very similar. The hierarchies are the same. They added some nicer pictures and combined this section, the green section in the middle, where it says remanufacturing. I'll go through from the top. So if this is the food recovery hierarchy, this outlines the priorities, with the top being the most important and the most desired outcome, and the bottom being the least. So the top is reduce. That is prevent the waste from happening. That is have systems in place for ordering, purchasing for your own home. I'll give you strategies along the way to also help prevent the waste. First thing you can do before you go grocery shopping is check your pantry, check your refrigerator, see what you've got. See what needs to be incorporated into the next meal or two, or within the week. And if you need supplemental ingredients to make that into the meal you were intending, go get those supplemental ingredients and don't accidentally go buy the same thing you already had and have half of it rot. So reduce is the highest and best good because that prevents the whole chain of events from producing the food that's not getting eaten. Next, if there's leftover food, feeding people is the next priority. And I've talked about that in a variety of ways. You can volunteer for programs. You can take actions in your own home. You can take actions whenever you organize an event. If you have an event, have it be your stand that no good food will go to waste on your watch. Think about what's being ordered, how many people are coming. So many people want to have it look like, and this is what happens in grocery stores. This is the problem of our desire to feel so abundant as a society. I've heard this thing called it's the 11 o'clock rule. Basically, if a grocery store closes at midnight, the person who comes in after a long day of shopping, of working at their work and working overtime or taking care of the family, whatever, and comes in and shops, they should be able to see the same level of produce as the person who came in at 8 o'clock in the morning. And that's unrealistic. We can't maintain this fullness up to the end so that that person gets to feel like they have unlimited choices. Certainly we want people to be able to shop and get the things that they need, but this desire to present abundance as opposed to sufficiency, like if there's some apples or there's some of everything but not a floor-to-ceiling display. We just need to get more realistic about what it means to interact with a food system where we get things as we need them and not have this it's a visual thing. It's really kind of become crazy as we go into grocery stores and see the way the food is displayed. It's impressive and it's beautiful. I mean, I would argue that it's almost a display of art in some grocery stores. And yet, is it necessary? Is there another way we could display things in a basket as opposed to an entire wall of it, or one deep instead of five deep, or that there's all sorts of ways. And I know grocery stores are working on reducing waste, but they're trying to meet our demand. And so there's a really cool show called it was on the Food Channel, and these chefs. It's called The Big Waste. Is what it's called. And they had these chefs who were in competition with each other to cook a meal for 100 people, like a fancy meal, 3-course meal, dessert, all that kind of thing, with food that otherwise would have been thrown away. And so these chefs, including Bobby Flay and some others, there was 2 guys and 2 women, they went around to butchers and bakers and produce stores and fishmongers and all this kind of stuff and said, show me what you're not going to sell. And they were blown away. I mean, like jaw on the floor, could not believe this is like, what do you mean? This perfectly good tomato. I could make a gorgeous sauce out of this, or all these kind of things. And they realized that we're all guilty of it. Our demand for the perfect looking produce means that everything that is anything less than perfect is not going to get eaten. It's not going to be sold. It's not even going to be offered. They're just going to pull it before it ever comes in front of you. And so these chefs who are, professionals in putting food in front of people, they're like, I'm going to start loving the uglies. I'm going to start picking those ones. If it's not going to be the cherry on top, so to speak, it doesn't have to be perfect. And if you're chopping it up and putting it in a sauce or making a pizza or doing any of these other things, you care about the quality of it. But not a blemish here or there, or things that people are automatically disqualifying the food for reasons that don't have to do with whether or not it's edible. So beyond people, the next best is to feed animals. I have chickens, and if you have neighbors that have chickens, you might talk with them about drop-off programs. We have in my yard we have 4 chickens and a compost pile, and some people say, well, I don't have room for compost, or I don't have time for compost, or whatever, but I believe that if you are committed to finding uses for your food, it is entirely possible. When I lived in a condo and didn't even cook that much, but the food scraps I had, I kept in a bucket in the freezer, and when the bucket would get full, I would walk down the street to one of my neighbors that had a garden, and they had chickens too, and take the compost. It didn't smell because it was frozen. Walk down there, plop it in their compost pile, and occasionally they would give me some eggs. Occasionally I got some lettuce. It built community. And my food wasn't going to waste. I was getting fresh vegetables. I was helping build their compost pile. And, it's a win-win-win all the way around. We have friends of my son who goes to elementary school, and we bike a lot of days. And this family that we bike with occasionally got in conversation with them about compost. And they said, oh, we don't have a compost. And we're like, bring us your stuff. So we show up some days, come home, and there's a little bag on the front porch of compostable, food cuttings and food scraps and things like that. And we toss it in our compost pile if it looks good. We started collecting the compost from my son's elementary school. We provided 2 5-gallon buckets with screw top lids so that they seal really nicely, and if they fell over, they wouldn't spill. And the school throws the scraps that the kids don't eat and things like that in there. And this is, probably all schools have decent food. This one has really good. It's called Eco Kids, and they serve organic food to the kids, and they get a lot of fresh produce and things like that. But even raspberries and even really good stuff. Sometimes the kids don't eat it all. Our chickens get first dibs on the compost stuff that comes from the school. It is good food, and they're turning that into eggs that we're getting to eat. And so I encourage you to think beyond your own system of your own household and think network, neighborhood level, community level. Is there a community garden where you could take your compost? Because that is the next step in the remanufacturing, is to turn that food into something else. So compost is one, biofuels another, other industrial uses are in that level of the hierarchy. And then the difference between the EPA and this hierarchy that I think is slightly better is they distinguish, they lump all these together because there were some disgruntled people at a national compost conference that I went to when it showed industrial uses or biofuel listed above compost. And I'm kind of a big fan of compost, so the more you learn about it, the more you realize how cool it is, how all this stuff can be turned into really rich nutrients in the soil. So the next level is generating landfills. And generating landfill is distinguished as a slightly better choice than just a traditional landfill or incineration. And a traditional landfill is just a daily cap and cover where they bring in the trash, and then they have dump trucks that spread sand or other media over it that basically mummifies it, and it traps it separates it from the air so it doesn't stink, doesn't attract birds and things like that, but it also doesn't allow it to turn into soil. So it putrefies in there, and it doesn't become soil, it turns into methane. And methane is a very potent greenhouse gas, depending on the time frame, between 20 and 70 times more potent than carbon dioxide. And we have all this attention and energy on carbon dioxide and how it's causing global, climate change. And yet methane is way more potent, and we're contributing to it every day when we put food in the landfills. I would argue that throwing food in the trash is the worst place it could possibly go. Is the worst place because it is turning into something that is hurting our atmosphere and is a missed opportunity to feed people, to feed animals, or to create compost or biofuel or some other useful product. So I challenge you to find ways to do anything other than put food in the trash. It is our duty, if we're going to continue to live on this planet, to not hurt ourselves with our food, to not hurt our planet with our food. We need to be nourishing ourselves and the soil and our animals. And the cost of animal feed has gone up. The cost of watering animals, just the moisture content in human food that's going to animals helps the animals. There are farmers that are struggling right now. It's really not easy to be a farmer in Central Texas. And so to the degree we can get programs connecting, juice shops with farms or produce outlets with farms. They can eat the potatoes and the carrots and the apples and all sorts of things. Pigs love them. Chickens love them. There's no reason for it to be, thrown in the landfill. So the difference between the generating landfill is where they capture a portion of, it's not 100%, but they capture some of that methane. In some cases, they just flare it off. They burn it, but it doesn't emit quite like straight methane. But it is better than a straight traditional landfill. But I encourage you to not see it as a panacea. It is not capturing all of it, and it's rarely actually being turned into fuel for real use. So rather than be like, oh, well, my landfill, they capture the methane, so it's not bad, I'll just put it in the trash. Don't think that way. Just think about ways to do something that are the higher and better use. So that's what the goal of the hierarchy is, to think, okay, if I were drawing this graph as the proportion of where things are really going already, like this, there'd be huge Jabba the Hutt kind of bubble on the bottom here, and you can't picture what's been reduced, but the amount that's going to feed people is minuscule. I mean, in terms of leftover food right now. Actually, I was surprised at how much is going to feed animals, because a lot of byproducts of the meat industry, as well as some of the vegetable and fruit industry, is turned into dog food and things like that. And so there is some of it being turned into other animal feed. But there's a lot more opportunity for that. And the amount of composting happening is growing rapidly. It's a really exciting time. If you don't know how to compost, there are classes going on. The city has a free tutorial online. And in fact, if you downsize to the smallest size trash cart that Austin has and you take that little tutorial on composting, you can get a rebate for a composting system for your house. And you actually don't even need a rebate. You need a few pallets, and there are pallets being discarded all over the place. Another opportunity for reuse. Tie them together with some wire, a bottom, 3 sides, and then a front that you can open and shut. It doesn't take anything really sophisticated. My husband built one out of some, cedar logs. It kind of looks cool. I mean, depending on the style of your house, some people prefer to not be in an environment where they're going to touch it, and they get the tumblers. Those don't work as well for our climate. I've heard of more people get disappointed with the outcomes of those, so I'm not going to push you toward that style. If it's all you're going to do, it's better than nothing. You just have to make sure you maintain your balance of greens and browns so it doesn't get all icky and attract flies and stuff like that. So it's possible. It's just harder in our climate because we have such floods and then droughts, and it's keeping the moisture content is a little bit difficult. But really the open piles are easier. Building the lasagna style. Dick Pierce teaches the citizen gardener classes and trains the other citizen gardener trainers. And a part of every citizen gardener training is a basic primer on how to start a compost pile, how to sheet mulch, how to do all kinds of things that are really not that hard. Just take a little bit of effort. But it's really interesting what happens when you start carrying your own waste out to the compost pile and noticing over time, what am I throwing away? If it's unconscious and it goes down the disposal or it goes in the trash, you don't necessarily pay as close attention to it as when you're hand carrying the small vessel. And again, inside your kitchen, there's different ways to collect it. We have a little ceramic thing that's from Japan and has a lid on it, and it has these little spouts that I think it was originally for soup. It has ventilation things for carrying it and for pouring it out. But it works really well for compost. I've seen bamboo designs, I've seen stainless steel designs, I've seen plastic tubs. You can be as low tech, high tech, fancy or not as you want, but it doesn't have to take up a whole lot of space, and when all else fails, if you have room in your freezer, that's another option. I would just encourage you to gather all the cuttings and stuff from one whole meal and then open the freezer once. Here's the carrot tops, and now here's the onion peels, and now here's the whatever, to do it all at once, just to cut down on the energy strain of opening the freezer too much. But let me look at my notes real quick and see if I've covered most of it. I think I've got the gist of it. I want to show you a couple more websites. So the local Food Shift Austin is not as pretty yet as the Food Shift website, but there are some basic information here. And we're basically committed, as it says, to accelerate our collective food prevention and recovery efforts in Austin and beyond. And one of the things that we did was we got the City Council to declare 2013 the year of food waste prevention and recovery in Austin. And I've been speaking regularly at all different kinds of events in different formats from the beginning of the year. I gave a TED Talk. In fact, I wanted to mention that if there are people here who you're like, oh, I wish they could hear this message and, get the concept, but they weren't here this morning, there's a 10-minute version of my talk that I did on YouTube, and it's called Trashing Food. If you're Googling it, I'm not going to play it, but it was a TEDx youth talk, and I use a pizza demonstration where it's an audience of teenagers. I start off by showing them the full pizza and then dropping pieces of the pizza in the trash and get these gasps from the teenagers. And in the end, I pull it out, and I had a liner and a plate in the bottom. And I said, by the way, you didn't think I was going to waste all this pizza, did you? So anyway, so that's available. Keep Austin Fed. You can sign up there. Food Shift Austin. If you have people who are in the food businesses, we have a survey under food business. This is Austin Food Establishment Survey, and we're trying to get different business owners to take the survey and find out what are their current practices. What are they doing right now to prevent waste? What are they doing to donate food? Are they composting? Are they doing biofuel reclamation? Are they taking their used oil and turning it into biofuel? And if not, what are they open to donating? Are they open to composting? Are they open to these different things? Trying to get a baseline of what the current practices are and the current attitudes are. And the fact is, in the next several years, it's going to be required for all food establishments to compost. But we're trying to get ahead of that requirement that they compost and start thinking further up that hierarchy that I was talking about. Because compost is good. It's really good. Don't get me wrong. But feeding the people and the animals and preventing the waste is even better. And so before it becomes the default behavior, like we're required to compost by the city, so we're going to compost it all. We're going to get some food donation programs in place, get some food recovery initiatives with farms in place, that sort of thing. So encourage your friends who are restaurateurs or trailer owners or anyone who serves food to go take that food establishment survey. And last but not least, the Austin Econetwork is, as it was mentioned in the beginning, is my website, and it has an active calendar, the eco calendar of events that are going on. I'll show you real quick. We have blogs written by local thought leaders. There's a jobs board that's pretty active, and let's see if I can scroll down here. So there are a lot of things going on, a lot. If you care about Austin and the environment and you want to learn about renewable energy, green building, transportation, birds, bikes, books, bugs, all sorts of things. And it's Saturdays, you can see, for example, over here, there's permaculture classes, birding trips, tree plantings, farmers markets, cleanups after the flood, seed saving workshop, a flea market, all sorts of stuff, aquaponics, celebration and fundraiser, time exchange network, and a movie. I think it was actually screened here at Gasland too. So that was just last Saturday. So there's lots of stuff going on in Austin. I encourage you to get involved, to get information about all the new stuff that's happening sent directly to you. You can subscribe. You can go to austineconetwork.com and subscribe for free. It's up in the corner here. I'll show you. So where it says sign in, I don't know why this screen is so small. There you go. Sign up or log in. So you can encourage your friends who weren't here also to go sign up and get the Eco News sent to them. It's twice a week. They said once earlier, but it's actually Mondays and Thursdays. All the green news that's fit to print. So with that, I'll open it up for questions and answers.
Raise your hands high so we can see you and take you in the order you raise your hand. Richard Halpin.
Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, Forum, for this wonderful presentation, and thank you so much for your terrific work that you're doing. It's very inspiring.
Thank you, Richard.
And Brandi, could you talk a little bit about how these food organizations work with each other? For example, the food organizations you talked about and the food bank, and how people who want to get involved and want to donate don't feel like they're competing with one against the other, but is there an integration or synergy you could share with us? Thank you, Bonnie.
I'll answer that in just a second, but you reminded me of something I didn't mention before. And one of the things that prevents people from donating food, or a lot of businesses from donating food, is this perception of liability. And we've actually had protection at the state level in Texas since the 80s. I mean, for decades. And I think it was 1996 we got federal protection, the federal Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Food Act, which protects food donors. And so universally, that should be like encouraging people, because the legislation not just offers legal protection, it encourages food donations. It says we encourage you and we will protect you in the event that you are making an effort to donate wholesome food in good faith. And if something happens to somebody, you're not going to be held liable. But the truth is that in the decades since those have been passed, I have not heard of a single case of a food donor being even attempted to be sued, much less taken all the way to some sort of judgment. I've heard of many more people just getting food poisoning from going to a restaurant, honestly, than from donated food. So as to how they can work together, my hope is that there is more working together in the future. It occurs to me right now like people kind of have their specialties, and we do this and we don't do that, and we do this and we don't do that. And that's kind of okay too, as long as it's getting covered. And there's a lot more room for more creativity. There are prevention programs like Half C's. They're encouraging restaurants to sign up on the Half C's program, where they offer a half portion of the meal, and then the money that would have been spent making the other half of the meal gets donated to a food relief agency. There are programs. Actually, the gentleman who used to be the CEO of Trader Joe's is piloting a program in Massachusetts, I believe, and they are taking the food, this is another great point, that is at its best buy date. I highly encourage you to look at this report called The Dating Game. And it was put out by the NRDC, the National Resources Defense Council. They have uncovered that billions of dollars of food are thrown away every year in the name of the best buy and sell by dates, which are not regulated. They are not standardized. They do not mean that the food is not safe by that date. It is simply a date to move product through stores. And so many people don't know that, and they assume that it's not safe after that date, and they throw it away. And it is perfectly wholesome, good food. There are certain foods that do turn, whether it's dairy, it's mostly animal products, meat, dairy, things like that. You have to be more careful, but I encourage you, trust your nose over a sell-by date, because they're generally designed to move product through the store, not to keep you safe. And so Mr. I think is Roush is his name, from Trader Joe's, is starting this retail store, if you will, that people could come in and get food, both whole, apples and things like that, as well as like soups and other food that's made. And it's not a soup kitchen because they pay something. It's a greatly reduced price of what one would normally pay to go buy some fresh soup. But there's dignity in it. There's sustainability in the business model. And I'm really hopeful that this model gets broad acceptance and reception. There's been this much so far, sort of like backlash at the idea of like selling spoiled food to people who can't afford it. Like, and it's not spoiled. Like and he owned the stores. He knows exactly what's going through them. This is wholesome food that is it's missed opportunity, and he's looking at a way to capture that food that's right at the cusp. It's like it's not going to be sold out of the store anymore, but he could take it, turn it into meals, and serve it to people and sell it to people. And I hope we see a lot more of that because, frankly, running programs like Keep Boston Fed is that are 100% dependent on volunteers, both for the operations, the delivery, the purchasing of coolers when necessary, and things like that. It's difficult. And so we need some business models that turn the charity into something that is also self-sustaining.
We have a question here. Would you stand and say your name, please?
Yes, my name is Robin Orlowski, and I myself am on the side of giving people access to wholesome, fresh foods. Mm-hmm. What is being done to revise SNAP time limits and other regulations which were enacted in 1996? We're still in a Great Recession, and what is being done to eliminate food deserts in Austin? Because grocery stores, notably H-E-B, have left neighborhoods such like on Berkman Drive. They've left, and people who live in the immediate area do not have a local grocery store to shop at. These do limit people's access to food, and without a local grocery store, people who are transit dependent don't have a way to get access to wholesome, nutritious, fresh food.
Yes, it's a great point.
That limits people's resources, people's access to nutrition.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for bringing up that entire subject area is critically important. And I was on the founding board of the Sustainable Food Policy Board, which basically has two main missions. One is to support the production and distribution of local food, local sustainable food, and the other is to address exactly what you're talking about, which is the access side, the equity portion of food and food access in our communities. And they have collaborated on a research study to identify exactly where the food deserts are and what needs to be done about it. There was a failed attempt this week to get the city council to look at what could be done to make sure that the least healthy food is offered to people in the areas around schools and places where kids congregate, playgrounds and things like that. It was I would say a flawed proposal to start with, but the intention that was behind it is a conversation we need to be having about having access to healthier foods, even if it is a McDonald's in a neighborhood. What is on their menu, and the argument of the people who are on the side of the quick service food industry, they were saying, don't penalize us because of the speed at which we serve food. I mean, because people can go get the same stuff inside of a convenience store, inside of a grocery store. They also sell ice cream and burgers and other things like that. Don't penalize us because of we're all over the place. But the question about what is available and how nutritious is it is really critical, and it's something that I don't think really any community in America has mastered this yet. And we have some people very thoughtfully and consciously looking at it. And I encourage you to get involved. And if you have specific recommendations, the Sustainable Food Policy Board meets on I think it's the third Monday of each month around lunchtime. But that information is available on the website, on the City of Austin website. And if you look under boards and commissions, it has all the list of when they meet. And the people serving on those committees, the food access committees, really do care. And they come from a variety of backgrounds, from nutritional backgrounds, from diversity and inclusion type, perspectives. They come from food manufacturing. And I think solutions abound, and creativity is welcome. And if you have ideas of what would make a difference, I've seen in other communities grocery stores coming up with like boutique versions of their big stores that fit into neighborhoods better and things like that. And if we see things that we like somewhere else, I would suggest look around the country, and see if we can bring some of that into Austin, whatever's missing. So thanks for caring about that and asking.
We have a question here. Would you stand and say your name?
I'm Martha Rogers. Would you tell us more about the East Side Compost Peddlers and other groups that are helping food vendors compost their waste?
Yes, there are a variety of compost operators in town now. Eastside Compost Peddlers is a unique one in that they pick up the compost from food establishments by bicycle with these trailers. It's not behind it, it's actually in front, and they have these platforms with a large, like 50-gallon drum strapped on, and they collect the stuff, and then they take it and they deliver it to neighborhood farms and various compost operations. But there are others as well. There's Texas Disposal Systems. There's Organics by Gosh. If somebody has a business and they want a composting service, it is available. And if you happen to be in the East Side, you also have the option of having it picked up by bicycle.
Dale Beulah, we have about 7 minutes left.
In this last January, Jason Sanders from Texas Disposals was talking about the composting program for our elementary schools in AISD.
Yeah.
Yet you were mentioning that your children were collecting compost. So I'm wondering, is your school not being served by the composting program?
Yes, it is. I'm sorry. All the elementary schools in Austin are composting now.
Okay.
2 middle schools and surrounding Austin, all of the Hayes schools, K through 12, are composting.
Wonderful.
And as of this fall, all of the Pflugerville schools are being trained up right now. Jason is actually actively going around to those schools.
He's great.
And we hope to expand that. No, those are home compost. The schools are not designed for people to bring their compost from home and put it in the dumpsters, but it's collected in the lunchroom. And there are monitors in the school classroom or in the lunchrooms that help the kids get the stuff in the right bin, and it gets taken out in these green bags to a specific dumpster that is for compost. And this Halloween, I'm the co-chair of the Green Scotties Committee at Highland Park Elementary, and we did a pumpkin composting operation too, and we had signs up around Halloween and saying bring your jack-o'-lanterns and pumpkins back after Halloween, and we collected them at the curb. We had little wagons, and we take people's pumpkins out of their cars and take it over the to the compost dumpster and put it in there. So,
Douglas Bauer.
Thank you, Brandi, for an excellent presentation.
Sure.
Preface my question. I actually do have a compost system outside. I rarely use it. I tried keeping my compost in a bucket in the kitchen for a while, and I decided it smelled, so I haven't been very active with it. But my question is, have you looked at composting from a larger holistic perspective in terms of the total carbon footprint and energy, used in all the various aspects of this? For example, you mentioned, having a designated driver at one point to take leftover food to someplace in town. That, of course, requires driving and fuel and time and that sort of thing. So just wanted you to comment on that a little bit. Thank you.
Sure. The designated driver I was speaking about mostly had to do with the leftover food from an event and the amount of energy it would take to drive that somewhere is so vastly minuscule compared to all of the energy it took to grow each of the ingredients and make it into something and get it to the point of ready to eat. And when it's ready to eat, if we can get it into the hands of someone who can eat it, that is the best use of resources. I would argue that, it'd be worth an 18-wheeler taking it over if that was possible. But there are programs in other cities like San Francisco called Food Runners. They move 10 million pounds of food per week with all volunteers. like there's that many restaurants and volunteers and all that kind of stuff moving that much. They have a few trucks as well. Once you get to a certain point in volume and raise enough money, you can actually have refrigerated trucks that can move stuff around. I should say that food safety is of utmost importance in this whole endeavor, and certainly in trying to help people, do not want to make them sick. And so it's important that people get familiar with safe food handling techniques and the proper length of storage and how, the temperature zones that food needs to be maintained at in order to safely be delivered to people. But honoring that, let's get a whole lot more food redistributed to people who can use it.
We have just time for one last quick question. Pam Douglas, would you stand?
Hey, Pam.
I'm really interested in that last part, food that has already been prepared and is left over from parties, left over from your Thanksgiving dinner, left over from your dinner parties.
Yeah.
Where can it be taken?
Well, I would say first, get some freezer-safe containers and keep it for yourself. Save that food. You can stop the aging process instantly by putting food in the freezer, and many foods will reheat up just fine. Offer it to your neighbors. Food that's been let me clarify that food that's at a restaurant has been set out on a buffet or has been served to people on their plates and it comes back. That is not acceptable to serve to other people. I, in the buffet example, would argue that, I think it'd be smart at the end of the night for them to offer a $1 meal to people, who were waiting outside and are willing to just come and, take whatever's left over and go eat some food. I think there's opportunities for preventing that from happening. But at parties, I would say size the food better for the number of people going to be there. Have containers left for the leftovers to go home with people, and have space in your freezer to save it for another day.
Well, we want to thank you for a very informative presentation. I'm sure many of us will be changing our strategies of managing our food waste. I hope so. So let's give Brandi a big hand of appreciation.
Thank you.